She needs the experience. 4 words. That's all it took to dismantle 7 years of my life. I was standing 3 feet from his desk, close enough to see the coffee rings staining the wood near his left hand, close enough to smell the mint gum he chewed when he was nervous. The gray suit I wore still held the sharp crease from where I'd ironed it the night before, leaning over the board in my kitchen while the radio played something I didn't hear. I'd gotten up at 5:30 that morning. I'd rehearsed nothing because I thought there was nothing to rehearse. The international position was mine. Everyone in the building knew it. I knew it. He knew it. His daughter sat in the chair beside his, legs crossed, thumb moving across her phone in steady flicks. She didn't look up. 25 years old, 8 months out of school. Her last job ended after 6 weeks. I didn't know why and I didn't ask, but I'd heard people talk. She'd called in sick 4 times in 5 weeks, then stopped showing up. I didn't say anything at first. My mouth opened, but nothing came. He filled the silence by saying my name, twice, like I hadn't heard him. Then he said something about growth opportunities and how the company valued my contributions. The words blurred together. I watched his mouth move. I watched her thumb keep scrolling. I walked out. I don't remember if I said thank you or goodbye or nothing. I sat at my desk and stared at the phone for 20 minutes without touching it. Someone walked past and asked if I was okay. I said yes. My voice sounded normal. That surprised me. What happened next? If you're listening to this, I'd love to know where you're from. Drop a comment and let me know. My name is Marin. I don't drink coffee after noon because it keeps me awake. But that day, I drank 3 cups between lunch and 5. They all went cold. I'd take a sip, set the mug down, forget it existed, then start over. By the time I left, my desk had 4 mugs on it, each one half full, each one room temperature. I drove home and sat in my car in the parking lot for 40 minutes before I went inside. The engine ticked as it cooled. I didn't cry. I grew up in a town with 1 high school and 2 traffic lights. My mother cleaned rooms at a motel off the highway. She came home smelling like bleach and synthetic lavender, the kind that burns your nose if you breathe it too long. My father drove a delivery truck. He left at 4 in the morning and came back after dark. We didn't talk much at dinner. We were all too tired. I put myself through college working night shifts at a diner, where truckers ordered eggs at 2 in the morning and left quarters on the table. I didn't have a network. I didn't have a family friend who could make a call. I had work. That's all I ever had. The company hired me 7 years ago. I started in a shared workspace with no windows, answering calls and organizing files. I stayed late because I didn't have anywhere else to be. I fixed mistakes other people made because it was faster than waiting for them to notice. I learned Spanish first, then Mandarin, then French, taking night classes and listening to language apps on my commute. I wanted to be ready when the international role opened. It was the position everyone talked about, the one that came with relocation support, housing stipends, and the kind of visibility that changed careers. It wasn't just a job, it was a life. I worked toward it the way you work toward anything when you've never been given something for free. Slowly, carefully, without assuming anything would come easy. The role was supposed to be posted in June. By May, 3 people had told me privately that I was the obvious choice. One of them was the head of operations, a woman named Joselle, who'd been there 12 years. She said it over lunch, her sandwich untouched, her hands wrapped around a water bottle she kept squeezing and releasing. She had 2 teenagers and a mortgage. She'd been passed over for promotion 3 times. Each time, someone younger with a better last name got it instead. She stayed because leaving felt impossible. Another was the finance director, a man named Anton who was 56 and too afraid to job search. He told me once, late on a Thursday when most people had gone home, that his ideas were stolen in meetings. Someone else would repackage them and present them as their own while he sat silent. He stayed because he thought no one would hire him at his age. He kept a photo of his daughter on his desk, the frame turned just slightly toward him so he could see it while he worked. There were others. I knew them all. I'd had lunch with them when their kids were sick. I'd covered shifts when they needed to leave early. I'd listened when they needed to talk, and I never wrote anything down. I just remembered. I spent 7 years doing that, listening. Not because I had a plan, because that's what you do when you come from nothing. You pay attention. You notice who's tired, who's barely holding on, who's been told they matter, but never treated that way. When the position went to his daughter, something inside me went still. I didn't yell. I didn't cry. I didn't throw anything or slam anything or send an angry message. I walked to my desk and sat. People kept moving around me. Phones rang. Someone microwaved popcorn and the smell filled the floor. I stared at my hands. They looked the same as they had that morning. The next day, I showed up at 8:30 like always. I smiled when people said good morning. I answered questions. I sat in meetings and took notes. His daughter was there, sitting 2 seats down from me, asking questions that showed she hadn't read the brief. I explained things twice, then 3 times. She thanked me. She said I was patient. That week I started training her, not because I wanted to, because he asked me to. He framed it as mentorship. He said it would be good for both of us. I said yes because saying no would have made me look bitter. So I taught her how to prepare reports. I showed her how to navigate the internal systems. I explained client protocols. She took notes on her phone. Half the time she wasn't listening. I could tell by the way her eyes drifted, the way she'd ask me to repeat something I'd just said. She asked me once why I stayed so late. Habit, I said. She nodded like that made sense. The weeks blurred. I stopped sleeping past 4 in the morning. I'd wake up in the dark, my jaw sore from clenching, and stare at the ceiling until the alarm went off. I started noticing things I'd ignored before. The way he never looked at me directly in meetings anymore. The way people stopped asking me questions about the international role. The way conversations dropped when I walked into the break room. I wasn't angry. Anger is loud and sharp and easy to see. What I felt was something else. Quieter, colder. I thought about Joselle, squeezing that water bottle, telling me she'd been passed over 3 times. I thought about Anton, 56, and afraid. I thought about the others who'd told me, in parking lots and over lukewarm coffee, that they were tired. I started making calls, not to recruiters, not for myself, for them. I'd spent 7 years building a network. People I'd helped, people I'd covered for, people who owed me nothing but remembered my name. I'd never used it for myself. I didn't know how, but I knew how to use it for someone else. I reached out to a former colleague who'd moved to a competitor. I asked if they were hiring. They were. I asked if they needed someone like Joselle. They said yes. I gave them her name. I didn't tell Joselle. Not yet. I did the same for Anton. Then for the others. Quietly, carefully, one call at a time. I didn't lie. I didn't exaggerate. I simply told the truth. These were good people who'd been overlooked. They deserved to be seen. Then I waited. The following Tuesday, I asked Joselle if she wanted to get lunch. Not in the building. Somewhere else. She said yes immediately, like she'd been waiting for someone to ask. We sat in her car in the parking lot of a sandwich shop 2 blocks away. She'd bought a turkey wrap, but hadn't unwrapped it. It sat in her lap while she gripped the steering wheel with both hands. The heater rattled. The air smelled like old French fries and the pine air freshener hanging from her mirror. I didn't ease into it. I said, "What would you do if you weren't afraid?" She stared at the dashboard. Her knuckles went white. "I'd leave," she said. Her voice was barely above a whisper. I nodded. "What if I told you someone reached out to me last month about a senior operations role at a competitor? They asked if I knew anyone. I gave them your name." She turned to look at me. Her eyes were wet, but she wasn't crying. "You did that? You deserve to be seen." She didn't say anything for a long time. Then, she unwrapped the sandwich, took 1 bite, wrapped it back up. She said, "They called me yesterday. I didn't answer. I thought it was spam. Call them back," I said. She did. That night, from what I heard later, they scheduled an interview for Thursday. I went to Anton next. I found him in his office after 6, when most people had gone home. He was staring at his monitor, but the screen was dark. He looked up when I knocked. He looked tired in a way that went deeper than missed sleep. I sat down without asking. I said, "Do you remember telling me about your daughter? The one in the photo?" He nodded. "What would you want her to do if she was in your position?" He didn't answer right away. He picked up the photo frame, ran his thumb along the edge. "I'd want her to leave," he said. "I'd want her to know her worth. Someone I know is looking for a finance director. I sent them your resume, the one you updated 2 years ago and never used." His head snapped up. "How did you? You left it open on your screen once. I saw the file name. I didn't read it, but I remembered." He put the frame down carefully. "Why are you doing this?" "Because you're good at what you do, and you shouldn't have to be invisible." He called them that night too. By Friday, he had an offer. I did the same with 4 others. A woman named Lena who ran client relations and had been told for 3 years that her promotion was coming next quarter. A man named Raj who managed logistics and had trained 5 people who all got promoted above him. 2 others whose names I won't say but whose frustrations I knew by heart. I didn't manipulate anyone. I didn't lie. I didn't tell them what to do. I just opened doors they didn't know existed and stepped back. Within 48 hours, all 6 resigned. No shouting. No dramatic speeches. Just calm, quiet letters delivered to HR on Wednesday and Thursday. Each one professional. Each one final. By Thursday afternoon, the news had spread. I heard people talking in low voices near the water cooler. Someone said the finance director was gone. Someone else said operations too. Then client relations. Then logistics. The names piled up. People looked confused. Then worried. I kept my head down. I worked through lunch. I answered emails. I updated spreadsheets. When someone asked me if I knew what was happening, I said no. Thursday evening, just before 5, I got a message. His assistant. He wanted to see me. Immediately, I walked to his office. The hallway felt longer than usual. My shoes made no sound on the carpet. I knocked once. He said, "Come in." His voice sounded strained. He was standing behind his desk, not sitting. His hands were pressed flat against the surface, fingers spread wide. His face looked pale under the fluorescent lights. His daughter wasn't there. 6 people, he said. In 2 days. Do you know anything about this? I stood 3 feet from the desk, the same distance as before. I looked at him, really looked. I saw the thinning hair he combed over, the slight tremor in his left hand, the way his tie was knotted just a little too tight. He couldn't hold my gaze. His eyes darted to the desk, then to the window behind me, then back to my face, then away again. They resigned, I said. That's all I know. All of them at once? That doesn't just happen. Maybe it does, I said. When people stop seeing a reason to stay. His jaw tightened. Did you have something to do with this? I didn't blink. I don't control what other people decide. He stared at me. I could see him trying to find something to grab onto. Some proof, some thread he could pull. But there wasn't one. I hadn't broken any rules. I hadn't poached anyone. I hadn't made promises I couldn't keep. I'd just listened. And then I'd helped. This is going to cripple us, he said. His voice cracked slightly on the last word. Operations is gone. Finance is gone. We have client meetings next week, and no one to run them. I didn't say anything. I need you to step up, he said. Temporarily. Until we can hire replacements. You know these accounts. You know the systems. I almost laughed. Almost. Instead, I said, of course. Whatever the company needs. He looked relieved. Just slightly. Just enough to unclench his hands. I left. I walked back to my desk. I sat down. I opened my laptop. Someone walked by and asked if I was okay. I said yes. My voice sounded normal again. That night, I went home and made dinner. Pasta with butter and salt. I ate it, standing at the kitchen counter, looking out the window at nothing. The apartment was quiet. I washed the dish. I went to bed at 9. I slept through the night for the first time in weeks. The next morning, Friday, I came in early. The building was almost empty. I made tea in the break room and sat at my desk and waited. By 10, the panic had set in. Meetings were being rescheduled. Clients were calling. People were running between offices, trying to figure out who was supposed to handle what. His daughter walked past my desk twice, looking lost both times. She stopped the second time and asked me if I knew where the operations files were kept. On the shared drive, I said, under the folder labeled Operations. She nodded and walked away. 5 minutes later, she came back. I can't find it. I walked her through it, step by step, like I'd done 100 times before. She thanked me. She said, I don't know how you keep track of all this. Practice, I said. The chaos continued through the weekend. I got emails at midnight, texts at 6 in the morning, requests for files, for contact information, for explanations of processes no one had documented. I answered them all, calmly, thoroughly. I didn't complain. Monday morning there was a meeting. All remaining senior staff. I sat near the back. He stood at the front, hands in his pockets, looking like he hadn't slept. He talked about resilience, about adapting, about how the company had faced challenges before and come through stronger. No one said anything. After the meeting, he pulled me aside. I need your help, he said. You know these people who left. Do you know why they did it? I think they found better opportunities, I said. All at once? Sometimes people talk to each other. Maybe they realized they weren't alone. He looked at me for a long moment. I couldn't tell if he suspected or if he was just desperate. Finally, he said, "Can you take on operations temporarily? Until we hire someone?" "Yes. And client relations? If that's what you need," he exhaled. "Thank you. I mean it. I don't know what we'd do without you." I nodded. I didn't smile. Over the next 2 weeks, I did the work of 3 people. I handled client calls. I managed schedules. I put out fires. I trained his daughter on tasks she'd forget by the next day. I stayed late. I came in early. People started referring to me in meetings. They'd say, "Ask Marin. Marin knows." He noticed. I could see it in the way he looked at me, like he was seeing me for the first time. 3 weeks after the resignations, he called me into his office. It was late, almost 7. The building was quiet. His daughter had left at 5. Most people had. He was sitting this time. His hands were folded on the desk. He looked older than he had a month ago. "I need to talk to you about the international position," he said. I waited. "It's not working out," he said. "She's not ready." I thought. He stopped, rubbed his face. "I thought she could learn on the job, but it's more than that. She doesn't have the foundation. She doesn't have the relationships. She doesn't have," he stopped again. "The experience," I said, quietly. He looked up. His face was gray. "Yes." I didn't say anything. "I'm reopening the position," he said. "I'd like you to apply." "Apply," I repeated. "Officially, for documentation. But the job is yours, if you want it." I looked at him. 4 words, I thought. That's all it took. "I'll think about it," I said. His face fell. "Marin, I'll let you know Monday." I walked out. I went home. I sat in my car again, engine ticking. And this time, I did cry. Not because I was sad, because I was tired. Because for 7 years, I'd worked towards something that should have been mine, and it took burning everything down to get it back. Monday morning, I accepted. Not because I forgave him, because I'd earned it. The paperwork took 3 days. HR processed everything with unusual speed. I signed forms. I reviewed the relocation package, housing stipend, travel allowance, everything that had been promised 7 years ago, when I first heard about the role, everything that had been given to someone else. His daughter didn't resign. She was moved to a different department, marketing, I heard. Something with less responsibility. I saw her once in the hallway during my last week before relocation. She looked at me and then looked away. She didn't say anything. Neither did I. I spent my final 2 weeks doing handoff meetings. I documented processes. I created guides. I trained the temporary replacements they'd hired to cover operations and finance until permanent people could be found. I didn't do it for him. I did it because the work mattered, because the clients mattered, because walking away without finishing things wasn't who I was. On my last Friday, there was no party, no cake. A few people stopped by my desk to say goodbye. They shook my hand. They said, "Congratulations." They meant it. I could tell by the way they looked at me, like they understood something had shifted. Giselle came by at 4. She'd given her notice 3 weeks earlier, but was still finishing out her time. She leaned against my desk, arms crossed, and smiled. "I start the new job Monday," she said. "How do you feel?" "Terrified," she said. "And free." I nodded. I understood both. "Thank you," she said. "I don't think I ever said that clearly enough. Thank you. You don't owe me anything." "I know, but still." She hugged me, quick and awkward. Then she left. Anton stopped by at 4:30. He'd already left the company 2 weeks earlier, but had come back to drop off his access badge. He saw me packing and walked over. "I heard you got it," he said. "I did." He smiled. It was the first time I'd seen him smile in years. Good. That's how it should have been from the start. "How's the new place?" "Better," he said. "They actually listen when I talk." I shook his hand. He held it for a moment longer than necessary. "You're good at this," he said. "Seeing people. Don't lose that." I promised I wouldn't. By 5, my desk was empty. I'd packed everything into 2 boxes. 7 years fit into 2 cardboard boxes with the company logo printed on the side. I carried them to my car. The parking lot was mostly empty. The sun was setting, turning everything orange and pink. I put the boxes in the trunk and stood there for a moment, keys in my hand, looking back at the building. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel victorious. I felt tired and ready. I got in the car and drove home. The international position was based in Singapore. I'd never been. I looked it up that night, scrolling through images on my laptop while I ate leftover rice at my kitchen table. Clean streets, tall buildings, humidity I'd have to get used to, a language I'd need to learn. I added it to the list. Mandarin had been useful. This would be too. I flew out 3 weeks later. The company paid for the flight, business class. I'd never flown business class before. The seat reclined all the way back. They brought me warm towels and nuts in a small white dish. I looked out the window as we took off, watching the city shrink beneath me, and felt nothing but calm. Singapore was exactly what the pictures promised. Hot, crowded, efficient. My apartment was small but clean, with windows that looked out over a street full of hawker stalls and laundromats. I unpacked my 2 boxes. I hung my gray suit in the closet. I set my alarm for 5:30. The work was harder than I expected. Not because I didn't know how to do it, because I was starting over. New clients, new systems, new colleagues who didn't know my name yet. I stayed late. I learned the trains. I practiced basic phrases in Mandarin with the woman who sold me coffee each morning. She corrected my tones patiently. 2 months in, I got an email from someone back home, a former colleague. She said the company was struggling. 3 more people had left. The CEO had hired a consulting firm to figure out what was wrong. They were doing interviews, asking questions, trying to understand why so many people had walked away. I didn't reply. 4 months in, I got another email. This one from him. The subject line said, "Checking in." I opened it. He asked how I was doing. He said the transition had been harder than expected. He said he hoped I was settling in well. He said he'd made mistakes and was trying to learn from them. I read it twice. Then I closed it. I didn't delete it. I just left it sitting in my inbox, unanswered. 6 months in, I got a message from Joselle. She was thriving. She'd been promoted already. She sent a photo of herself at her new desk, grinning, holding a coffee mug that said, "Boss." I sent back a thumbs up emoji. She replied with 3 heart emojis. Anton sent a message a week later. He'd started mentoring younger staff at his new company. He said it felt good to be valued. He said his daughter was proud of him. He attached a photo of the 2 of them at dinner, both smiling. Lena, Raj, and the others sent messages too. All of them doing better. All of them lighter. I saved the messages in a folder. I didn't need to read them often, but I liked knowing they were there. A year in, I was running 3 major accounts. My team had grown to 8 people. I'd hired them carefully. I looked for the ones who worked hard. The ones who stayed late, not because they were told to, but because they cared. The ones who didn't have connections. I looked for people like me. I made sure they knew they were seen. One evening, after a long meeting, one of my team members stayed behind. A young woman named Priya. She was 26. She'd been with the company 4 months. "Can I ask you something?" she said. "Of course. Why did you pick me? For this team?" I looked at her. She was nervous. Her hands were folded in her lap. "Because you're good at what you do," I said. "And because I could tell you'd been overlooked before." She nodded slowly. "I was. At my last job. I stayed 2 years and never got promoted. They kept saying next quarter. That won't happen here," I said. "Not on my watch." She smiled. It was small but real. "Thank you," she said. "You don't owe me anything. Just do the work. And when you see someone else being overlooked, remember how this felt." She promised she would. I still think about that Tuesday morning, standing in his office, hearing those 4 words, watching his daughter scroll through her phone. I think about the weeks after, the cold coffee, the sleepless nights, the quiet visits to people who'd been invisible for too long. I don't regret it. Not the plan, not the outcome, not the way it unfolded. I didn't destroy him. I didn't ruin his company. I just helped people see that they had options, that they didn't have to stay in places that made them small. The rest was their choice, their courage, their decision to walk away. What I did wasn't about hurting him. It was about helping them, and maybe helping myself too. The international position was always supposed to be mine. I worked 7 years for it. I learned 3 languages. I stayed late. I fixed mistakes. I built relationships. I earned it in every way a person can earn something. When he gave it to his daughter, he didn't just take a job from me. He told me that none of it mattered, that work wasn't enough, that I wasn't enough. He was wrong. The 6 executives who left didn't quit because I manipulated them. They quit because someone finally told them they deserved better. They quit because they were tired, because they'd been waiting for permission to value themselves. I just gave them the information. They made the choice. When he called me into his office that Thursday, pale and shaking, asking what happened, I could have told him the truth. I could have said, "You did this. You taught them that loyalty means nothing, that effort means nothing, that the only thing that matters is whose name you carry." But I didn't. I just looked at him the way you look at someone who never really saw you and said, they needed experience too, the kind you can't get by being handed things. He understood. I could see it in his face, the way his mouth opened and closed, the way his hands trembled against the desk. 3 weeks later, the position was mine, not because he wanted to give it to me, because he had no choice. I was the only one left who could do the job, the only one who knew the clients, the systems, the languages, the only one who'd stayed. I took it, not as a gift, as payment for what I'd earned. I'm in Singapore now. I've been here a year and a half. I run a team. I manage accounts worth millions. I wake up at 5:30 and make tea and watch the sun rise over a city that isn't home yet but might be someday. I don't think about him often. When I do, I don't feel anger. I feel something quieter, satisfaction, maybe, or just closure. He gave his daughter my job because he thought experience didn't matter, because he thought work didn't matter, because he thought people like me were replaceable. He learned otherwise. If you made it this far, thank you for listening. I'd really appreciate it if you could drop a comment with your thoughts and subscribe if you want to hear more stories like this.